My name is Maclaine Black. I'm a portrait and rave photographer. I've been doing photography for 5 years and rave photography for the last 2. Basically, my journey with rave photography started in September of 2021. So I've been doing photography for a couple of years just as a hobby. And I started doing sort of like commercial like portraits, shoots and bits and pieces. And then Hope, who runs Dali, just texted me and they were running like a day party out in West Cork, and she asked me if I wanted to come down and do photos at it. And it was the first event that I ever got booked for. And I was really scared, and I didn't want to almost turn it down, you know, because I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna be what I want to do, you know, because I never thought about it for myself before. But I went down and I did it and I just fell in love with it. And then kind of from there, like that was a big step for me, because then those pictures got posted on the Dali page. So then a lot of sort of people involved in the Cork techno scene found out about me and my work through that. And then when the Thrifka guys were doing their illegal raves during the kind of coming to the end of lockdowns, you know, when like pubs and stuff were open, but we weren't back at like nightclubs were still closed, and those guys were doing illegals, I would just go and just bring my camera and would just do photography at those, just because I loved the scene, and I was there anyways, and I love photography. So it was just a really sort of a match made in heaven for me. And then through that, through those raves, I just obviously, you know, when you're at raves, you make friends with people. So I was able to make friends with a lot of like promoters and stuff in the Cork scene. So then whenever we came out of lockdown and nightclubs started opening up, like everyone already sort of knew that I was a photographer, because I had, you know, everyone had seen me at all the raves with my camera. I was always having a good time, and the photos were like good enough, so that whenever like commercial nights started happening again, we could actually go back to proper venues. Everyone already knew who I was, so I kind of just fell into it. You know, I've just been really lucky in the way that opportunities have come my way. And then in May of 2022, BLK was playing in Cypress Avenue, and Lucky Mo was on like that booking, and he booked me as a photographer. And that was the day that I met the guys who run Rave. So I was up in the green room, and I was just like saying hi, like introduced myself. I was like, oh, I'm playing, like I'm doing photography tonight. And then I showed them some of my work, and the guy who ran Reboot was like, do you want to be our photographer? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, we run like a lot of shows. Like he was like, we need a photographer. Like and you know, they were like, we really like your work. He was like, you could like, we'll pay you for your travel, we'll pay for your accommodation, like we'll bring you to basically every show we're running that you're able to come to, and you can do photography at them. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great, you know. And that was kind of like when it really kicked off for me, you know, when I got like the sort of residency with Reboot as their photographer. It's just blown up from there, you know, and it's just been brilliant since, you know. Like I've been really, really lucky with the people I've got to work with, the people I've got to meet. Like the Reboot guys especially have just been great to me and great for me. So I'm really, really thankful for them. I feel like it's impossible to talk about the work that I do without talking about Alex Verhalle. But I'm sure it's a familiar name to a lot of people. Like he does like stop motion rave videos, and he also only shoots in black and white. So my story with him is actually a bit of an interesting one. I actually found him in 2019, so like nearly like about 4 years ago, when I was still doing photography as a hobby, and I had no idea that it was gonna become what it's become for me at this point. But back then I was still shooting color, and then I came across his work, and I was like, oh well, actually this guy does what I want to do, and he only shoots black and white, and it's his career, and he's really good at it. It's like working for him, you know. So like there's no one who's influenced my work more than him, because when I found his work and I found what he was doing, I was like, oh, it's actually like exclusively black and white as like a viable option. And I've hardly taken a color picture since. And then beyond that, like La Haine is my favorite film. You know, like if you watch that film, you'll see so many parallels between it and my work. In terms of other photographers, there's a girl, Salty from Kazakhstan, who I'm really good friends with. Her Instagram's ascorbic acid. And she just really inspires me because I'm always trying to kind of push boundaries with abstraction and portraiture that I do. And every time I think I've really done something unique and I'm like, okay, this is like the weirdest way that you can take a picture of a person, I look at her page and I'm just blown away by the shit that she's doing. Like, she is just so cool. For Service Scene, Costas Focas and Gerardo Vithmanos are another photographers that I'm so inspired by. Do a lot of sort of like queer culture portraiture, but again, sort of tackle the same sort of like abstraction and anonymity that I try to keep as a big part of my work too. So, you know, like there's so many people that I've been inspired by and that have influenced my work. I could sit here for 2 hours and give you 200 different people, but those are kind of like the biggest. The sort of moments I try to capture when I'm doing rave photography, it's kind of a hard one for me to explain because I think like anonymity is a really important aspect of like rave culture. So I try not to photograph people like individuals while they're raving unless they're either friends of mine or people that I've explicitly asked, like gone up to them and be like, hey, like you look like you're having a really good time. Like I love your outfit. I love, you know, like I love your energy, whatever. I'm the photographer tonight. Is it okay if I take like pictures of you while you're partying? And I think that's really important to me because from my background as a raver, like so much of what makes the scene what it is that like sense of escapism, you know, when you get to just go to this place where you are just so separate from the rest of the world and you can just do your own thing, and it's like that whole like no judgment aspect of it, and you can just be free and be yourself, you know. So it's really important to me that I let people feel that same safety. So I try not to get in people's faces and not like basically not to be like aggressive with my photography. So I try to capture like the DJ, obviously the performers is a different story because they're there to perform, you know. So I try to document their experience. I try to show them in the best light possible, you know, work with the venue and the lights and stuff to make them look as good as possible, make them look like they're having a good time. And also I try to get sort of like wider crowd shots of just the sort of atmosphere in the room. So you'll notice in a lot of my photography, a lot of the pictures that I take of ravers in a rave is either from their back, so it's like the backs of everyone's heads and like their shoulders and stuff, or else it is from behind the DJ and the focus is on the DJ, so the actual people in the crowd are out of focus. You can't really make people out, and that is something that's really, really important to me, and it's something that I try to hold myself to, which I feel like a lot of kind of say maybe photographers who have a background in photography but don't have a background in raving maybe don't necessarily understand, is that, you know, like the point of a rave is to go and like be yourself and like have a good time. Your average person doesn't like being photographed if they don't know about it, you know. So I think it's really important, if you want to take a picture of someone, it's really important that you ask. And also if I'm taking a picture of a crowd and someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, can you delete that picture? Like, I don't want anyone to know that I'm here. I think it's really important that you do delete that picture, you know, and like you're there to document this experience. But a rave, first and foremost, exists to be experienced. It doesn't exist to be documented. There was a party that Dali threw in Let, I think it was April of last year, in Connolly's, and like that, it was my first time down there, and that venue is just so cool. And you were able to get up to kind of like a balcony kind of thing. So it's a picture that I took kind of overlooking the whole downstairs. So you have the DJ, and then you have like all the crowd behind, and you have that little the like wall decor that they had in Connolly. But it was when I was just starting to experiment with like slower shutter speed for gig photography. So it's kind of, there's like a zoom, and it looks like almost like whenever you like lift up a rock and you see like loads of like wood lice, it like looks like that almost, you know? So you get this kind of like, almost like unnerving feel when you look at it, which is something that I always love because, you know, like raves aren't pretty places, you know, and I don't try to make them look like that. Like I try to document raves as they are. As well as that, there's a picture that I took of BLK in Cypress Avenue when he was playing in May. And it's actually not a good picture, and I'm not happy with it at all, but it's such a sentimental picture for me because that was the night that I met the reboot guys, and that was, you know, like that was basically the turning point in me being able to be a full-time photographer, you know, was meeting those guys and getting to actually do this as a job. As well as that, there was a picture, there's two pictures actually from the same event. So it was one of the Thrifka illegals. So there was one picture, it's a portrait that I took of a friend of mine, who I'm not gonna name, but they're wearing like a duck mask, and you can see like the rave was in like an old like castle, so you can see like the stonework behind them, and you can see kind of the motion of like other people like around them. And I just felt that one really sort of captured what it's like to be like a person in a rave. And then at that same event, again, it was a kind of sort of top-down look on the whole event, and you can just see that everyone is just having such a good time. And again, it has that sort of like dungeon feel to it, you know, like it looks like, it's the sort of image that like if you've never been to a rave, you'd be like, what the fuck am I looking at? And then if you've been to one, you'd be like, oh, that's a really good party, like I wish I was there. And then finally, this was like the highlight of the first time I got to do photography for Charlie Sparks in Drogheda, just before Halloween. And that was actually like that night, I'll never forget it. You know, like Charlie Sparks was one of my favorite DJs in the world, and I was, you know, just so thrilled to have an opportunity to do photography for him. And the way it worked out, he was flying, I think he was flying to either Germany or the Netherlands because he was playing a gig, and I was flying to Edinburgh the day after because I was doing a gig there. So the two of us actually drove to the airport together, so we had a really nice like talk in the car and stuff about it. And he actually ended up asking me for my Galway playlist because I was playing tunes at the afters, and he was really, really enjoying it. But while we were in that car, we were just talking about various different things, and he was asking me, you know, like how photography was going for me. And I was like, yeah, like I've been doing it full time. I think I've been doing it for about 2 or 3 months at that stage. And he was like, that's so cool, like that you get to do what you love as a job. You know, like that's just always stuck. Like Charlie Sparks, like one of the biggest DJs in Europe, right, in the world right now, you know, told me that my job was really cool, you know, and he was like happy for me that I got to do what I loved as a job. So that's always really stuck with me as, you know, like, and sometimes when I get like bogged down in sort of like the nitty gritty of it, I think about that and I'm like, no, actually, I'm so lucky that I get to do what I do as a job. And like, it's, you know, I've met so many amazing people and done so many things that I just was dreaming about when I was younger. So that, like, all the photography from that gig is always going to be really special to me as well, more than anything else. There's so much that I love about it, you know, like I've done photography events nearly anywhere that you can do an event. I've done photography at this point, you know, like all the big like hotspots in Ireland and a couple of places in the UK as well. Like Cork is just my favorite place in the world. Like we're so lucky that we have the scene that we have here, you know, like it's such a resilient scene, you know, like we haven't had a good venue since Dali closed in 2020, you know, and we're like still the scene is alive and well, you know, like you have, say, the Thrifka guys who were doing illegals during lockdown, and then the Cryptic guys who are doing illegals now, and you have like more techno collectives than I have fingers in my hand. You know, there's so many people that are running events in the limited spaces that we have, and like running really, really good events. But just the scene is just so strong, and like everyone, I think my favorite part about the core techno scene is that it feels just like a family, you know, like there's such a sense of community between everyone And like even when you go out to like a gig, particularly because a lot of the venues that we have to operate in are sort of more limited capacity gigs, you know, kind of 100 to 200 capacity. Like when you go to a techno gig in Cork City, you just feel like you're at a house party because all your friends are there. You're friends with the people that are playing. You know the venue inside out because you've been there so many times, and it just like it's a really safe place to party. Like I'm like queer and like non-binary. Like sometimes I like dress in like quite a gender non-conforming ways. Like I've never ever had a bad experience at a techno event in Cork, and I've had so many other bad experiences in Cork, you know. So like I feel really, really safe here. So that's one of my favorite things about it. So many good promoters, so many good DJs. Like I think the biggest problem with Cork techno scene is just lack of venues, you know, because we don't really have a venue that can cater towards international acts. So there's no incentive for anyone to book sort of big headliners, say from like Europe or even from like other parts of the country, you know, because it just isn't financially feasible for promoters to book someone who charges like a $2 or $3 grand artist fee in a venue that can only have 150 people in it. You know, like the numbers just don't make sense. So fingers crossed we can get a new venue soon that can cater towards those sort of bigger acts, because the demand is definitely there. And you know, but like I have no doubt that the Cork scene will sustain itself no matter what happens, because you know nothing's stopped us yet, and I don't think anything ever will. The stereotype about the techno scene and the drug culture there is a stereotype for a reason. Like there's a huge drug culture in the scene, and it is, you know, like it's a huge part of it for a lot of people. For some people, it's the only part of it, you know? Like there's definitely people, you know, like there's so many, even like friends of mine that would be like, oh, I can't go to a gig sober. Like I have to be like on drugs to like listen to that sort of music. And I don't like, it's so hard to talk about because, you know, there's so many people affected by it and stuff. But I do think that there's been a shift kind of away from the music and towards the drugs a little bit. And there's like, not everyone, but there's definitely people that are going to gigs and they're not going because they love the DJs or they love the music or, you know, they want to like dance. They're going because they want to do drugs. And, you know, like that's understandable, and that was me for a long time. And I just think it's really important to kind of check in with yourself every so often and, you know, just sort of like ask yourself, like, why am I going to all these events? Like, am I going because I want to support the scene? Am I going because I enjoy it? Or am I just going because all my friends are going? And am I going because that's just what a Saturday is to me now? It's just going out and getting a bag of this or a bag of that or whatever it is, and staying up till 7, 8, 9, 10 in the morning, and then spending all day Sunday in bed, and then going to work for the week, and then doing it all again, you know. And I definitely think there is a real sort of danger in, I think, particularly in the whole country for sure, but also like because the Cork scene is so active, like there's always something to go to. If you want to go to a rave, you can find one on basically any Thursday, any Friday, any Saturday. Someone's organized something somewhere. So if you're in that kind of loop of just go to whatever's on with whoever's around and just go and just get really fucked up, you know, like it's really easy to fall into a really sort of bad loop. And that's something that happened to me whenever I was getting started with photography. I was like, oh, this is great. Like I can go out and I can party and I can get paid for it, you know, I can like do what I love and I can, you know, drink and like do drugs. Like, you know, I used to like laugh. I used to joke with my friends. I'm the only person who drinks more when they're at work than when they're not. you know. So I got into a really bad loop with it that way, and I had to pull myself out of it and take a break. And it was really hard, and I wanted to, and I wasn't able to. And I feel like there's lots of people like that who kind of want to take a break but don't really know how to. So I think it's just important to kind of like check in with yourself and just make sure that you're going to raves for the right reasons and that you're partying for the right reasons. I'm not going to sit here and preach like no one should ever do drugs ever again. Like that's not realistic, and that's also like not true. You know, like there's a drug culture around the techno scene because the techno scene is so much fun. If you do, you know, like if you like doing drugs, like the techno scene is a place for you. But I just think there needs to be, and this extends beyond the techno scene into sort of wider society in Ireland. Like there needs to be more education about like harm reduction and about addiction and about like, because there's so much to it that people don't realize, you know. And I think it definitely, like the stigma is going away, but because the stigma is going away, like it's becoming more normalized and it's becoming more like romanticized. You know, like people love to share their like horror stories about like, oh, like I went out for like 1 pint on Thursday afternoon and then I was out until Sunday evening. You know, and like people love to tell those sort of stories. And you know, we all have those stories. We've all been there, but like that's not sustainable and it's not good for you. And it's, you know, if you're really honest with yourself, it's not even that much fun either, you know. So I just think that you need to sort of just be mindful and just listen to your brain, listen to your body. If you're thinking about taking a break, you should probably take it. You're getting to a stage where you're like, oh, I can't believe it's Saturday again, I have to go out. Like, that's not where you should be. Like, what makes this like little corner of life so enjoyable is the, like, you know, the anticipation and like the excitement that you get of like going out and like actually getting to, you know, let loose for a while and, you know, like really just like forget about everything else. And if you're like, you know, say if it's like coming up to Saturday and you're like I don't have enough money to like get a bike, so you're like going into debt to like go out and rave, like that's a really dangerous cycle to get into. So yeah, I just think it's just know your limits and listen to yourself. Like I've been raving sober for the last 3 months and I'm having as much fun as I did when I was in active addiction, you know. It's like chalk and cheese, you know, like they couldn't be more different in my opinion, you know. Like I, particularly now that I'm sober, like I really notice it. Like I go to raves sober all the time. I have so much fun with them. I cannot go to a nightclub sober. I feel so out of place. I feel so uncomfortable. Like I don't like the music. I don't like the people. I don't feel safe a lot of the time. It's just like, I think the biggest difference between like your commercial night out and a techno night out is just the intentions of the people that are going there. You know, like say your standard night in like Secret Garden or Coleman's Yard or whatever, you have people that are going out because they want to get really drunk. You have people that are going out because they just turned 18 and they just moved out and they just want to see what it's like. You have people that are going out because they want to have sex with a stranger and then never see them again. You have people that want to go out because they genuinely want to have a good time. You have people that want to go out to catch up with their friends, but they don't really know how to, and you know, they're just like sucked into that sort of like nightclub culture. Like there's so many people go out to like nightclubs for so many different reasons, but like the rave scene and the rave culture, like I get, like you still have people that are going out for different reasons, but there's this huge like through line of, because the music is so like intimidating and off-putting, like if you're at an electronic music event and you like that music, you already know that you have something in common with every single other person there, you know. And like I think not necessarily that people don't realize, but like subconsciously you like know that, and that makes you feel like you're a part of something when you're there, you know. So there's this real sort of sense of community because the scene is so interconnected that like you just would know. You're like, if you've been in the techno scene for more than 6 months, you're going to know someone on every single lineup in the city because the scene is just that tight and that friendly. So like that's great about it too, you know, like, and it's, you know, like I was saying earlier, like going out to an event in Cork just feels like going to a house party, you know, and you just get to like see all your friends, you get to listen to music that you love, and people that you are friends with are playing the music, so you know you're gonna like it because you know these people. And just from like for like me specifically, like I just feel so safe and so comfortable at techno gigs, you know, and like people love to say that like Ireland's like a really progressive place, and like it is in a lot of ways, but it isn't in a lot of other ways, you know. And like there's been times that I've been in like nightclub bathrooms, like just trying to go to the fucking urinal, and someone's called me a faggot or called me this, that, the other, you know, and I just because of what I've been wearing, you know, and no one has ever said anything like that to me at a techno club, you know, and like. For me, that's a huge part of the difference, is that I know that I can go there by myself if I want to, and I'm not going to feel like threatened by anyone there. And I think that is the biggest appeal of it for me and for so many people, is that it's just like this actual escape where you can go and you can be yourself, and everyone else is just being themselves, and we all have this thing that we love that we get to congregate together for and enjoy together.